I'm now very pleased to welcome for our next sponsor spotlight, Glenn Jones, who is a GVP of Product and Marketing at Blume Global. I think Glenn, GVP, that is, what is that?
Global
Vice President. Okay.
Yes.
I should know that. My apologies. Okay.
It's just a title.
Yeah. True. So, I didn't have to agree with you on that, though, right? So, well, anyway, thanks for joining us, and thanks for your sponsorship. First, why don't you give us a snapshot of Blume Global and what you do? And I think it has something to do with what Jason was talking about just before us with the supply chain and containers and chassis and all that.
Absolutely. It's that's the business we're in, and thanks for having me on, and good afternoon. So yes, Blume Global, we rebranded about 3 years ago. Originally we were called Res1, and so we manage the reservation system for the EMP and UMAX program. So if you're using Union Pacific, CSX, Norfolk Southern, Canadian Pacific, Canadian National, Kansas City Southern, they all have intermodal containers in that pool. So, mainly IMCs, most of the customers are IMCs, intermodal marketing companies, and they would come to our reservation platform, find a domestic intermodal container, and then arrange for drayage and the movement of that container. We track it end to end all the way through billing and settlement. We also offer an intermodal TMS, and so that's primarily for ocean carriers and for IMCs, and even railroads use it in some cases, and it lets them digitize, automate, and optimize their operations. Also, as we'll talk about in a minute, add agility to their operations. So, letting them quickly adapt. And then, of course, we provide end-to-end visibility solutions. So you can track your orders, your items, your shipments from the time they're picked up, sometimes overseas, in domestic world, inside North America, and move from origin to destination with predictive ETA. So that's at a high level. Blume Global, we're a technology company. We're not a freight forwarder or a broker or a shipper. We just provide technologies to those companies.
So speaking of agility, as you just said, what is the most immediate challenge facing the intermodal industry today?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So, we spent the last couple of years talking to over 50 CEOs, COOs, chief supply chain officers of shipping companies, of IMCs, railroads, and here's what we heard. 1.5 years ago or 1.5 years ago, pre-COVID, the real focus was predictability and efficiency. How can I get predictability on rail? If I can get predictability, I can manage my inventory levels. And I can make sure that I'm, keeping as lean as possible while keeping our costs down and our transportation costs down. Well, as you well know, that went out the window pretty much, or at least it had to be complemented once COVID hit and the dynamics of what happened during the pandemic. And of course, we see this all the time, but really the pandemic has accentuated how you have to be agile. It's not good enough just to be efficient and just to be predictive. You've got to enable your customers to, the agility to be able to change, where that cargo is destined, sometimes in mid-flight, especially as it's coming across the ocean. So that's that's what the real challenge is in the intermodal industry right now. They've got the Amazon effect, as you mentioned, and really dealing with that instant gratification.
So we've seen a lot of disruption in the supply chain, which eventually will straighten itself out. But how can stakeholders in the intermodal space prepare themselves for future supply chain disruptions? As we know, they will eventually happen, regardless of what causes them. God forbid a cybersecurity attack or something. Something's going to happen. Act of God, Mother Nature, hurricanes, floods.
Exactly. No, that's and so we use the word they have to build their agility muscle. So the railroads, the IMCs, the ocean freight forwarders, the ocean carriers, it's gone from, and sometimes I say agility trumps efficiency. And so, you've got to know when you have to be able to, make those kind of changes as demand changes. And as, you can see trying to clear marine terminals right now on rail, and being able to, if you're doing a domestic intermodal move and it's, running across, multiple trains, you have to be able to potentially change destinations and hubs. And so, we say, visibility, and that's important. So but it's insufficient. And so visibility is being able to see the disruption. So I can see, I'm going to be late. There was a weather event. There was, the vessel arrived late into the marine terminal, which is happening every day today. And then on top of that, you have to have transparency. So transparency is understanding the impact of the problem. What did that really do? Now I've got Peloton bikes coming in, and they're supposed to be at, Best Buy or wherever they're going, and I can't get them there on time. What is the impact of that? And then the agility is what the infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure offers back to the shippers to say, hey, changes in demand, how do I get it there faster? Do I pay more and get a train that has less stops? And so, or do I have to shift modes? And so now can the railroads maybe offer an alternate mode? Maybe they team up with trucking or something else to get the cargo there faster, even FedEx. And so, that's really the important thing. And that's what's really happening right now. And that's what the infrastructure, more or less the stakeholders in the intermodal supply chain need to start doing. And we already see this. I mean, we work with railroads, we work with IMCs, we work with trucking companies, we work with the ocean freight forwarders, and they're all trying to enable this agility for their customers, for the shippers of the world.
So let's talk about Blume Global specifically. Where do you think the intermodal industry is heading in the next few years, and how can Blume Global specifically help intermodal stakeholders take advantage of the opportunities coming up that you see?
So certainly the being able to really enable that agility, being able to take a late change order, and run something through a transload center and managing that through the transload center to get it onto a different mode of transportation or a faster train or something like that is really important. But the other thing we see long term is more around sustainability and more around automation. And so we're seeing more and more of our customers say, hey, it's not only important to have the efficiency, but in our carrier selection, we want transparency of CO2 emissions. We want to understand when we make, a truck mode versus a rail versus an air, what is the impact on that environment, and how can Blume provide that in first of all, when I'm selecting my routes and my carriers and my mode of transportation, how can we see what that is? And then at the end of the month or the end of the year, how do we know what impact we've had so that maybe we can invest in carbon offsets or other initiatives to help kind of offset, what we're doing in the transportation world. Right. So that's become a huge theme right now. And it's, even in the middle of the pandemic, it kind of stemmed a little bit, but it's back live and kicking.
So these are some of the specific sustainability initiatives that you talked about, and that's important. Before when some of the other speakers they're talking about ESG, environmental and social governance. You folks can definitely help with those initiatives.
Absolutely, yeah. No, we we're one of our objectives, our big, hairy objective is to remove. So right now, I think if you look at the transportation and supply chain, it's about a $16 trillion industry. And we believe that by leveraging our technologies that we can remove about 1 trillion of waste out of that. And so a lot of that comes from reducing empty miles. And, that's a big initiative for us. That's a lot of, we invest a lot in science and being able to, in the world of intermodal, there's a couple of things we do. One of them is called domestic reload programs. And of course, in that world, it's a marine container winds up in the middle of North America and it's empty now. And now, the ocean carrier's already paid for it. It's going to go back empty to the seaport and then probably go back empty. And so ideally, you want to match that up with an export move. But as we know in the U.S., the exports are significantly less than the imports. Canada is a little bit better, but it's still not completely offset. So we offer programs in our platform, and we work very closely with the railroads and with the shipping to enable the IMCs or others that are moving intermodal over rail to be able to use a domestic container, an ISO container, a 40-foot, 20-foot, 45-foot for a domestic move. So if you're moving cargo from Chicago back to City of Industry or maybe down towards Atlanta on the way to Savannah, instead of shipping that container back empty, it's now available on our Res1 platform, and you can use it as opposed to potentially using a domestic intermodal container. Obviously, your cargo has to fit that model. Right. The other big thing we do is, we've got algorithms that do route optimization. We call them street turns. And so matching, that one is, from a seaport, matching imports with exports. But the bigger opportunity, and we did a study with the Boston Consulting Group a few years ago and found out just matching outbound moves from a rail ramp with inbound moves, there's a lot of savings there. And so instead of, the drayage carrier running out with a full load from a rail ramp and then coming back empty and then grabbing another one and running out, we can match an outbound move on rail and then match that with an inbound move on rail. So you're just empty for whatever miles are between those two, the drop off and the pickup site. And then, yeah, those are a couple of big initiatives, and they're paying off. And we're seeing a lot of reduction in empty miles.
All right, excellent, Glenn. Thanks so much for joining us, and and thanks for Blume Global sponsorship. And I'll say this every time: have a safe day. Thanks so much.
Thanks, and thanks for having me on. Take care, Bill.
Okay, very well.